Good evening. When Sam Tarry was elected MP for the safe Labour seat of Ilford South in 2019, it was with a majority of nearly 25,000 votes. You might think that would make him untouchable, but in the last 24 hours, his own party has made sure he won't be running again. At hustings last night, it was decided Jas Athwell, the leader of Redbridge Council, will represent the borough at the next general election instead. Tarry is the first sitting Labour MP to be deselected in more than a decade. Today he says he's deeply concerned by the decision and plans to challenge it, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Sam Tarry's name is plastered over the Labour Party office in Ilford, but the signs might soon end up in a skip because Mr Tarry has been dumped by his local party. 10 weeks after he was sacked as a shadow minister for speaking out on a rail strike picket line, he's now set to lose his seat in Parliament. The Ilford South Labour Party has instead chosen Jas Athwell, the leader of Redbridge Council, to be its candidate at the next election. In a statement, Mr Tarry said he was utterly crestfallen. It's clear he's also very angry. He described the selection process as a manufactured political circus, and he questioned the legitimacy of the vote to get rid of him. In his statement, Mr Tarry said, "I am taking some time to consider what's next, but in order to be assured of the integrity of the result, I am asking the party to share with me the full information of who cast electronic votes, by what method and when they were cast." Mr Tarry was a Jeremy Corbyn supporter. He's reported to be in a relationship with Labour's deputy leader, Angela Rayner. He was chosen as Labour's candidate for the safe seat of Ilford South in 2019. Councillor Athwell, seen here on a recent visit to Ukraine, was banned from taking part in that contest when the party suspended him at the last minute. Many of his supporters believed he was the victim of a left-wing plot. Mike Gapes is Ilford South's former MP.
A lot of people thought that Jas Athwell would have won, and of course a year later, 18 months later, he's reinstated in the Labour Party and the accusations against him are dismissed. But that was sufficient to mean that he wasn't eligible to be the candidate.
The row has exposed bitter divisions in the Labour Party. London's mayor declined to take sides.
Both Sam Tarry and Jas Athwell are both friends of mine. They're both really Labour stalwarts. They've both done a huge amount for our party. It's for local members to decide who their candidate is in a seat.
In Ilford today, Labour's decision to choose Councillor Athwell as its candidate seemed a popular one.
I've heard good things about Jas. I've met Jas myself as well, and all in all, he's a good guy.
Jas Athwell, obviously, he's been chairing the council for a long time, a number of years. So he seems to be a decent man. I like him.
I'm pleased Tarry's gone. He didn't represent me.
Mr Tarry is the first sitting MP to be deselected by Labour in more than a decade, and it looks like he's not going without a fight. Simon Harris, ITV News, Ilford.
Good evening. The Metropolitan Police has been criticised for not doing enough to deal with climate change protesters. Over the past few weeks, activists have shut down parts of the capital by gluing themselves to the busy streets and sometimes blocking emergency vehicles. But the Met Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, told the London Assembly that until the demonstrations reach a certain level of disruption, there's little his officers can do. Our political correspondent, Simon Harris, reports.
For 11 days, environmental activists have done their best to disrupt London. Yesterday, an ambulance on a 999 call was caught in the gridlock in Knightsbridge. So was a fire engine, also with its blue lights flashing. At one point, a man's heard saying he's trying to get a baby to hospital. The police response to the protests has infuriated some politicians.
Members of the public are taking it in their own hands to try and drag them off the streets, which could be dangerous for everybody concerned, but I quite frankly don't blame them. I think I'd be tempted to remove them. And even stories of police officers giving these people sat in the middle of the road cups of tea.
But at the London Assembly today, the Met's new commissioner said police could only move in if the protests crossed a critical legal threshold and threatened serious disruption to the life of the community.
We're taking a view from TfL, relevant local councils, so in most cases on this one I imagine Westminster, and other partners like emergency services. And over the last 11 days, all of those partners have been of the view that it doesn't cause serious disruption.
That came as something of a surprise to retired Detective Superintendent Shabnam Chowdhury, who listened to the Commissioner from the public gallery at City Hall.
That's the thing that I find really surprising, that ultimately they're saying it's out of their hands, they're powerless to act in respect of that, and it is a matter now that is a decision that's made by partner agencies.
Today, protesters were out again, blocking Parliament Square and taunting police by climbing onto their vans close to Downing Street. Sir Mark told the Assembly the police operation had tied up an enormous amount of resources. The number of officers on duty amounted to more than 2,000 days of police activity. The Commissioner said he was frustrated that the Met hadn't done better for London, but one London Assembly member praised the force's restraint.
The ability to protest in a democracy is a much appreciated freedom in our city and in the country, and it is really important that the police protest fairly and without fear or favour.
The combined activities of Just Stop Oil, Animal Rebellion and Insulate Britain might not count as serious disruption, but the protests have led to more than 300 arrests. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Next tonight, is the ULEZ expansion on hold? The Mayor wants to extend the ultra-low emission zone beyond the North and South Circular next year to help clean up London's toxic air. But today, for the first time, he admitted that the plans could be in doubt. Questioned about whether it was right to charge people in outer London an extra £12.50 a day during a cost of living crisis, Sadiq Khan said postponing the idea was in the mix. Our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
London's ultra-low emission zone is having growing pains. The Mayor wants to enlarge the ULEZ next August to all of Greater London. That, he says, will allow another 5 million people to breathe cleaner air. But he's under pressure from City Hall Conservatives to delay the expansion because of the cost of living crisis.
For those families, as you refer to, who may be having to choose between heating and eating, by August, you're requiring them to find money for a new car. I mean, could you take that weight off their mind today and tell them that you're not going to go ahead with it in August?
The question is, will I today rule out an expansion, right? I spent the last 12 minutes
will you rule out an
explaining.
expansion in August? You have to listen carefully to the words.
And then came the Mayor's first hint that he might be prepared to put the extension on hold.
I take your representations about a delay. I suspect you're not the first person to have suggested that in the consultation responses, bearing in mind what you said, but I'm sure that's one of the things that will be in the mix when it comes to TfL analysing the consultation.
So a possible delay is in the mix.
The ULEZ may be delayed. That's fantastic news.
Dan runs a florist's in Romford. The ULEZ extension, he claims, will cost him an extra £7,000 a year to run his 2 vans. Even a temporary reprieve would be welcome.
I'm hopeful that it will be delayed because it gives us breathing space. It gives us, all our small businesses, breathing space during a very difficult time.
The Mayor says he won't make a final decision until he's seen the outcome of a public consultation held during the summer. Even the public consultation into the ULEZ expansion has become embroiled in controversy. Last week, Sadiq Khan claimed it had been hijacked by opponents, many from outside London. But some pressure groups say, why shouldn't drivers from beyond the capital's boundary have a say?
People drive into London, people come to London, tourists come to London. What's wrong with that? This is the whole process, is that he is inhibiting people from entering London. So why shouldn't they actually take part in actually objecting to it?
Transport for London has hired a consultant to analyse the results of the public consultation and produce a report to help the Mayor make a final decision. He expects to do that by the end of the year. Simon Harris, ITV News, City Hall.